We are on.
Awesome.
All right. So we do have some participants, but we'll wait just a minute or two. Uh, I'm Bill Miller for those who are on, and that's Daniel Rosenrauch over there on the
Mhm.
right hand side of the screen. At least on my screen, you're on the right hand
Yeah.
side, and I'm on the left.
Yep.
So we will get going in just a couple of minutes. It is recording, so everything that we say can and will be held against us on the
Sounds like
internet. I tend to put these up unedited, so
perfect.
I do like to do that. You get to see the whole conversation,
Love it.
and so we'll say at 2:01, which is less than a minute, we'll get this thing started. And
Awesome.
we try to hit 45 minutes to an hour, somewhere in that range. Uh, but I don't go over an hour. I don't want to take people's time.
Of course.
So, and it's not lunchtime except for in the what mountain time zone.
Oh yeah. If you get a second to get out of your desk, right? That's always fine. Or it's like
Yeah.
4 o'clock. Darn, I didn't have lunch today.
All right. So welcome to the CEO Success Story series. This is our third success story webinar. Uh, I'm Bill Miller, and Daniel Rosenrauch, who is the co-founder and CEO of Viirtue and has a really great story to share with us today of how he got there. Our goal is really to have a conversation between he and I, and you know, you attendees can post questions in the chat if you want. I'll keep my eyes on that, and we can answer questions either on the fly or if the question's related to something you just said, or at the end. So we can go from there. A little bit about Daniel. Uh, Daniel is a thought leader in the telecom space. He's a frequent speaker. He's well known as a thought leader and an industry innovator. And on his LinkedIn profile, which I think is interesting, he's a creative futurist and an operational maestro. So I don't know if everybody else knows what that means, but I have my version of that. You can share what you think. And being in the wholesale space, Virtue, an advocate for the channel in the UCaaS market, so which is Unified Communications as a Service, and I believe you guys offer a white label service. So those have become very popular since the BroadSoft days, and we had to have somebody replace them as a leader. So today, we're going to discuss Daniel's personal path to become a CEO because it always helps others understand what they can do to get there if they're not there yet. And he'll share stories and advice and tidbits how he's handled certain situations that hopefully will help other CEOs be better at what they do and maybe fill a gap that they have. So, without further ado, let us move on. And I will ask the questions. Stanley, why don't you start and just do a brief about yourself and Virtue
Yeah, of
before we
course.
get into the questions?
From I mean, you already gave me, I think, an amazing introduction, so I thank you for that. But yeah, so my name is Daniel Rosenrauch. I'm CEO here at Viirtue. I've been with the company since actually before we rebranded. Been operating since 2013. Started my career as a CTO here. Recently moved into the CEO role as of, I believe, August of 21. So still getting settled in, but definitely hit the ground running for sure.
Right. And tell them just to because actually the first question is you can maybe get into how you started, but when did you know that you wanted to become a CEO, and how did you prepare when you first realized that idea?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been passionate about watching businesses grow, and I have a cool story to tell, I guess, along these lines. Is when I was younger, I was super into video games, and just technology in general. My mom was an MSP, and in the 80s and 90s, an MSP is a very different thing. It was essentially building every computer with custom bits. So I remember being like 4 or 5 years old, sitting up on the test bench, putting servers together and stuff with her, and it was definitely like a big part of my childhood, but specifically back to just, to video games, I was a little bit unique in how I played video games. So where most of my friends were playing like, World of Warcraft or, those types of, I guess, like fiction based fantasy based games. I was more into games like Madden NFL, and when I say that, I wasn't into playing the football side of the game. I'm not sure if you've ever played that game before, Bill, but it's basically there's a franchise mode where you can toggle like ticket pricing and concession pricing, and
Hmm.
who you're signing as free agents, and just essentially running the business side to that sporting team. So I would simulate the actual football games. I wouldn't play any of those. I found more interest in the operational business side of it. So, looking back to that, I think that was like the first indicator that I had that entrepreneurial spirit, I should say. But, just I've always been super passionate about watching things grow. And even like, my one hobby, I would say in my downtime is gardening. And just, it's just such a rewarding experience, just planting a seed, watching it take shape, watching it bear fruit. There's nothing like it.
Well, would you? That's really interesting because I mean, I never played the Madden side of that football. Early on, I used to play baseball, simulated
Yeah.
baseball, and it was
Yeah.
very similar, where you can be the general manager and you can do the trades. And uh, it didn't get into the contract side when I was younger, but it got into the trading and various other things as it simulated the previous season. And they had new. It's actually cards, not on computer.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah, yeah,
computer, it was a board game, right?
exactly.
But, in your as you were describing your story about being on the bench building servers, uh, was that the biggest influence that inspired you?
So,
Your
I mean,
mother and the MSP?
yeah, I think it actually had like a negative, the opposite effect. So, just to really quick dive into that story of my background. So my mom always wanted to pass on the MSP business to me. I think she had like 3 or 4 people at her peak. She had it was a great lifestyle business, and that was always her goal, right? Pass it on to her son, who was a technology person. But of course, I didn't want to follow in my parents' footsteps, so I went my own route. I actually originally wanted to be in the FBI, so I joined the military, went that route. I actually early enlisted at 16, and scored really high on the ASVAB. So that was my goal. But once I got to the military, I think I kind of changed my mind on where I was headed. And as I got a little bit older, it just became more clear to me that ended up at the same place, just took a different path to get there.
Now you moved into the technical side,
Hmm.
uh, first before Virtue was even created.
Yeah.
There was a precursor that became part of Virtue.
Hmm.
Can you share your initial story as a
Yeah.
technical service or support resource,
Yeah. So,
and then
and
you
again,
moved up?
I think I've heard somebody has told me this at Nortel, and it's very true, right? I don't think anybody ends up in telecom by choice. I think we're all either dragged in, or it's by accident, or whatever the case is, right? So, and that's truly what my experience was I got out of the military, right in 2007, 2008, and it was they weren't hiring any kind of federal jobs like that. It was right smack in the middle of that economic downturn. So I was lucky enough to score an internship, an engineering internship at a Nortel dealer, and quickly worked my way up there. And unfortunately, Nortel ended up in that pile as well. But I was able to translate what I learned there at Nortel to Avaya and to future in my career. But that's really how it was. I just as soon as I picked it back up on the technology side, I knew it wasn't I wasn't going back in the opposite direction, of whether it was law enforcement or working for the government. I knew at that point really my direction would be in technology. It might not. I didn't know if it would be in telecom specifically, but I knew I definitely wanted to do something in technology after that.
And you were like a sales engineer first? Was
Yeah,
that the
well, I mean,
role that you had?
I was a help basic intern at first. I was the helper. I was the, "Hey, guy, go get us coffee." So and I worked my way up from there, and yeah, into the engineering side. I actually ended up working my way up to like enterprise or deployments. Did a lot with like school systems, education. Did a lot with the accounting verticals and healthcare verticals that had like niche nuance, like compliance related things. So yeah, just slowly over time, just being a sponge, studying on. I basically taught a lot of it myself online. Look, I think there was a forum, Tech Tips, that one of my superiors at Nortel gave to me, that I would just scour the forums and help try and solve problems myself and things like that. So yeah, I guess it just kind of got thrown into it, but just that was how my career progressed until decided to start our own thing.
And then you were a CTO. The CTO, as you mentioned earlier, you were the CTO before you became the CEO. Can you share a little bit about that? And when you were CTO, how did you move to the CEO? What were the business reasons for that? And you know, were you fully prepared for that?
Yeah, great. We're never fully prepared for that, but, no, it was very much like a planned you're right. It was very much like a planned, change of events. So even though I still am, right, obviously, like a technology person, if you meet our CTO today, who was formerly our VP of engineering, Wojtek, like, just another level, right? I like to call him, he's like a super saiyan, software person. I truly don't believe I've met a lot of great software people, so I don't, I don't say this without, you know, taking away anything from them, but he's just truly gifted. And there was no way, that I could see myself as being the technology leader here. And then so, Rob Finch, who's our co-founder and my partner, we took a step back and we kind of looked at our roles and just said, where does it fit? Like, what is a traditional CEO supposed to do? What is a traditional COO supposed to do? A CTO supposed to do? What are the roles and responsibilities so we can easily identify it? Because to us, we felt like it made it confusing for people within the organization as we scaled to know who to go to for a certain problem because we were almost like mistitled. So with that, we had a structured change of titles. We very much same responsibilities we've always had. Just I think our titles now align better with what we actually do here at the business. So Rob was our CEO before, but he's 100% a COO, right? He's an operations kind of person. The guy that's going to sit in and investigate expenses and ensure, as far as like employment stuff is all taken care of. Like he's very much that type of discipline and skill set. So we just felt like, everything matched and, and it was the right way to proceed.
And Virtue has been around in some form for what, about 8 or 9 years, something like that.
Correct. Yeah. So Viirtue was actually formed out of like of several service provider businesses. So Rob owned a business called Element VoIP. I believe he started that in 2008, and I had started a business called Syntel Solutions in 2013. And what we did was towards the end of 2017, those businesses, as well as we had one other acquisition, we made a small acquisition at that time. So we brought all those businesses together and formed Viirtue.
So in forming Virtue now is a pretty successful wholesale provider. What were the top two or three challenges aside of the mistitle
Yeah.
uh, that you guys overcame on your way to creating the successful version of Virtue?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think being bootstrapped at first and just growing the business, and any entrepreneurs that listen to this, that's part of it, right? Just putting money out of your own account back in month after month, and you don't know when that's going to stop. It's tough, it's definitely it's a tough thing. And I like to tell. There's a story I love to tell. So back in I don't know if it was 2014 or like late 2013, whatever it was. But we had a former wholesaler, and we were just getting off the ground. I think I actually just had taken my first paycheck finally, and they had like a 3 day long network impairment, and I just remember we lost a bunch of big customers because of it, and I just remember
Hmm.
just kind of like assessing the situation, just saying, "Hey, I did everything right, right? I sold the deal, I closed it, I installed it, I set up everything properly, and then everything was just ripped out from under us, and something completely out of our control, nothing that I could have done in that situation better." So, at that point, like I said, it was something like 18 months or something along those lines that I'd gone without a paycheck. I think, again, I just had finally taken my first paycheck. So we went, she wasn't my wife at the time, but with my now wife, Tiana, we went to the Turtleback Zoo in New Jersey, and we walked around. I remember just discussing with her that we were going to walk around. I wasn't going to really think about it. I was just going to, look at the animals, just try and relax. And I was going to decide if we were going to give it another push through or if I was just going to quit and leave it there. And, I just, the way I looked at it was you don't get many opportunities in life to take risk. And at the time, I was still young. I could live with my parents if I really needed the support. If I needed that to fall back on, I could move back in with them. And I just kind of thought to myself, like, when am I going to get another chance like this? Like before you know it, you got a family, and you just can't take calculated risks really to that extent anymore. So we walked out of the zoo, and I basically looked at her, said, we'll give it 6 more months. And we signed a bunch of big accounts. We built out our own network over the next 6 or 7 months. And, the rest was really history. And what to that extent, to that story, last night, just coincidentally, I was at the Tampa Bay Wave, which is a local incubator here. I know we were just talking about before, Bill. And it was their pitch night for cybersecurity, and met with a lot of the entrepreneurs after their pitch, and I could tell most of them, if not all of them, were in that same position where I felt like I was, 7, 8 years ago, where they're like, "We're out of money. Do we give up? What do I do next?" And that, well, the advice I would give is, it's not going to be your last roadblock. You're going to have way more like it. But you got to take in the process, right? Like, as being a CEO or just being an entrepreneur in general, that's the best part. So anytime I see somebody struggling with that piece, and just kind of like ready to give up, I just tell them, like, take a step back, like, enjoy this part, because whether you succeed or fail, like, irregardless, like, this is the part where you're going to define your story. Are you going to persevere, or are you just going to give up and walk away?
The path to CEO is not that simple.
It is
However, it sounds like it's both challenging,
Yeah,
rewarding, and fun.
it is. I would
But
agree.
but the challenging part, I wonder what the percentage is. Have to do some research of people who don't move on from that point
Well,
where
9
you
out of 10
were.
fail in 5 years, so I'm sure that speaks volumes to that.
Yeah, I know, I know. So so Daniel, thank you. How would you define your leadership style, and how does it differentiate you from peers to drive your success? Of those 4 out of 5 companies that fail,
Mhm.
how do you differentiate yourself with your leadership style to make it successful?
Yeah, so, our leadership styles, or my leadership style, I should say, and I would say that I think the entire leadership team shares this style, is definitely like a participative approach. We're not a dictatorship. We're really about being a democracy here, and we share. I've said this before on other interviews. We kind of overshare to an extent, and we share things with our team that I know for a fact, it's places that I worked before, or other peers of mine would not share with their team members. And the reason that we've taken this leadership style is, it's hard to get a team of people to work towards a goal if you do not share what that goal is. So for us, by being transparent and candid with our team members, and them understanding, what, as a business, what are we working towards, to me, that's the only way to run a business. I mean, I never agreed with. I was military, so obviously I was a little bit turned off by the authoritative way. But just being able to have, like, our team clue in on what we're doing, and add feedback, and take advantage of all the really great minds that we have here at Virtue. We would begin doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't include them on our decision making. And I would say, like, the peers that I've seen, and I don't, I think every leadership style can be successful to a degree, but I think, as like the newer generation comes along, that authoritative leadership style, it just doesn't fly anymore. You can't treat people like children, right? We're all adults here, and we love that feedback, whether it's internal or external.
So you bring up some interesting points with the openness and the sharing. In my book, The Rookie CEO, I talk about one of my pet peeves, which when I worked for 9 rookie CEOs in a row, uh, there are some commonalities that were very bothersome to a lot of employees, and especially the senior leadership team. And that's the secretive nature of some CEOs, especially rookies, new ones,
Yeah.
that don't want to be open with their people, and they don't share the goals, and they don't share the mission, and they don't share the vision. They only tell them what to do.
Yeah.
And in fact, I've described some of them as CEOs as the SVP of marketing, the SVP of engineering, the SVP of this, the SVP of that, because they want to make every decision.
Yep.
And that
You
just
got to take
that
off those
just
hats. It's not
yeah,
scalable.
you got to hire the right team, and you talked about that earlier with you and I. You got to hire the right team. You got to trust them. You got to build that trust. Uh, you got to understand each other, have empathy for each other, and work together. And then it's much more successful for everybody. So that was a great answer to that question. And then, of course, I talk about how the leadership styles and philosophies of a CEO, which we've heard a lot of yours, actually create the culture of the company. So,
Absolutely.
can you tell us about the culture that you've created at Virtue, and the philosophies and styles that you and your management team have, that impact the culture and keep it moving on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, and I can't say that like I'm the only person that's created the culture here. I've had a great leadership team, to surround myself with, whether it's Wojtek, Shar, Sean, just the whole team has added their own like personal touch and to the culture of the company. But I would say like if you're gonna say like who is Virtue, just in a nutshell, we're youthful, we're scrappy, we challenge the status quo. We're always, like Wojtek says, always be innovating. But that's the type of energy that we bring to this space because we look at a space that, and you said it, not much has changed the last 15 years. People have the same, right, the same shows at the same places. It seems like everybody, is using that same, approach, which is time tested, right? So it's not to say that it's not an approach that works, but we definitely look at things with and through a completely different lens where we understand like workflows that need to be processed and we take a step back and just try and evaluate it and how can this be done more efficiently or how can this be more intuitive. Just bringing across that mindset to everything we do. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to describe us, we're scrappy, we're innovative. That's who we are.
I could see a lot of folks wanting to work in an environment like that.
Yeah.
So that leads into my next question, which is, um, what unique challenges did you guys experience over the past 2 years in the pandemic, and how did you achieve success that you're experiencing today? Because a lot of companies that did well during the pandemic are really coming out much stronger, even on this end.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say, one of the things that we did right away, it was our marketing. Our marketing, we kept super agile and just, at the start of COVID, nobody knew what to expect. So I'd be lying if I told you that we had like the best plan in place. And to be quite frank, most of my part, they were all panicking. We watched the market go from like 33, 34,000, the Dow Jones to 18,000 overnight. So our first assumption is, are we going to lose half of is half, if the market lost half of its wealth, then the only reasonable expectation is, hey, are we going to lose half of our clients? Are our clients going to cut their businesses in half and shut down their seats? So it was definitely, the first few days were pretty scary, but once, obviously COVID had the opposite impact, not only on technology and software as a whole, but specifically for VoIP and UCaaS. But one of the things that we did though, right away, I had a family friend that's in pharmaceutical as an SVP, and basically like a week and a half into it, they were like, "This isn't going away in a couple of days. This is going to be a 1 to 2 year thing." And we're kind of going on about how long it takes to actually get a vaccine to market before that stuff was in the news. And I remember looking at them like, "You're crazy. There's no way people are going to deal with being locked down for 2 years. No chance." And the days went by, and another week passed, and right, everything got kept going and actually getting worse with the shutdowns. So we made the decision basically like 2 3 weeks into COVID, that we were going to pivot our marketing budget completely. So we killed all trade shows for the next 18 months. So all the way up until June 21, we didn't do any in-person events. We killed all budget for that. And we pushed that budget all to like a digital demand gen strategy, which is omni. We did an omni-channel approach. So it wasn't to one digital market, or digital content, but we pulled all of our budget there. And now for 22, we've actually gone in a kind of opposite strategy. We haven't killed our digital marketing side, but we've invested a lot this year into like in-person conferences and events because we think people for the last 2 years have been locked up, so they're trying to get back in, which we hope is a good prediction. But I would say that speaks to being an entrepreneur and having the gut instinct of what to do in a situation where that's never right. Like there was no playbook for how to deal with COVID. And not only to know what to do, but I think a lot of people kind of felt like, all right, maybe we should pivot this way. But in order to stay lean and to make a pivot like that during a time like that, you got to follow through. And I think that's what I've seen as a struggle with a lot of the startup entrepreneurs I've been working with as of recent, is that right, everybody has an idea and what you want to execute, but it's the actual execution, or just doing it right, that's the tough parts. Hopefully I answered that question.
Yeah. And so, what's next as we get through the pandemic? Right now, you've explained a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah.
You see the rest of the general population and probably many of your customers are making people come back to work into the
Mm.
office, and or they split hybrid, some are at home and some can go in the office. How do you see that affecting the market, the business, and even the great resignation? How do you see that impacting?
Yeah, I think so. There's no playbook, right? Here at Virtue, we've gone completely hybrid. So we have we had a New Jersey office, but we did close that just simply people weren't using it. So I think most of the folks in Jersey, they'll go to like a WeWork or something like that from time to time, but essentially, we don't have a permanent space up there. Down here in Tampa, actually, downtown St. Petersburg, I'm personally out of Tampa, but our office is in St. Petersburg. We entire building, and we actually moved in there. I shit you not, March 19th. So remember, they shut the country down. It was the Friday we were moving in, getting all
Oh
the
yeah,
cubicles set up. That Monday, the country got shut down. So, and we were specifically Rob. I felt really, that was his dream to have this like state of the art, awesome facility there in St. Pete. And we really never got to take advantage of it. And even now, like I'll go in like 1 or 2 days a week. I think we'll have like 3 or 4 stragglers that stroll in, but like that building was meant to house like 40, 50 people. So it's I don't think it'll ever do that, to be quite honest. But we really embraced the hybrid approach, and I think I know a lot of folks are kind of forcing their teams back into the office, and time will tell how that goes. But I think definitely work is permanently changed. If you don't have at least the flexibility to work from home, it's going to be tough. And just the productivity, I don't know if you saw, but I know we saw from a KPI standpoint, productivity went through the roof during COVID because people weren't commuting 2 hours a day each way. So instead they were
right.
getting stuff done, right? It was magical, to be honest, for us. So I couldn't see us ever going back to an in-office fully like approach, but hybrid for sure. You'd still have to see people from time to time.
Right. Well, you have to go to customer sites sometimes in your business. I don't know exactly how the wholesale side works as much as I do
Yeah.
the reseller side where they used to do truck rolls all the time.
Yep.
But I
Yep.
know that Mark Asayan and Bill McLean, the phone bill, who was they were on the two previous webinars. They were considered essential during those lockdown days. And so they always had a couple of people at the office that could take customer calls or even go to a customer site if they had to. If they were down, you got to do something
Hmm.
because they had employees that are remote. They had, e-commerce that was running. They had to keep the network alive, which included all the UCaaS stuff. So they actually were considered essential in their local regions. So that was interesting. I don't know if you had the same situation at Virtue.
Yeah, and obviously, like, we're mostly wholesale. We'll still do previously, the story we always tell is we were a service provider, of course, so we still have, like, a lot of legacy customers that we still manage, and, yeah, that was definitely an issue, but I think, for our space, specifically in technology, the fact that we can handle most things remotely is just such a blessing, and even, like, I remember working at Nortel and, like, even to go change a name on the I don't know how familiar you are with those Nortel systems, like on an old Nortel Kicks, like there was no, I mean, unless you had like an iAd, but there was no remote access. You had to go to the site
Right.
and then hit a bunch of buttons on the desk on the receptionist phone, right, to get into programming and just change a name or reset a
Right.
voicemail password. So, those are things that I think a lot of the newer folks to our space don't weren't a part of, but I'll never take that for granted. There's nothing feeling less productive than spending an entire day driving, around 12 hours and all you did was maybe change two people's names and flip an extension number. So,
Yep.
yeah, I'm glad those days are gone.
I remember that from Fujitsu days, believe me.
Yeah.
Uh, so let's talk about some of your routines to stay sharp. Do you have any morning or evening routines to help you stay sharp, focused, anything like that, or can you
Yeah,
share those with us?
I'm definitely have a few quirky tendencies, I'll say. So, I wake up around 5:30. During COVID, I was doing this comes from the military. I guess I got that clock in me, but I was doing the 4 a.m. thing every day, and I just felt that at a certain point that got unsustainable. So now I try and at least, if I wake up at 4, I'll try and shut my eyes until 5:30. And then I'll spend about 2 hours generally just, reviewing analytics insights, whether it's like Hotjar or HubSpot or Google Analytics or, whatever the case is. Just getting up to speed on and just having it's great to just have things to react to first thing in the morning as an operator. And then I spent about probably like 30 minutes working out, just to get blood pumping and going and stay healthy, of course. And then once the actual like work day or the business day, right, actually like communicating with team ends, which is usually around like 6 to 7, I would say for me. I'll spend the next 2, 3 hours actually just sitting through and just replaying the day in my head and just understand like did I solve this problem correctly? Could I have responded to this customer, better? Did I choose the right words for this conversation? Whatever the case is. And then generally it ends, my wife yelling at me to come to bed. I'm on the iPad still looking at KPIs and insights, like I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, where they're just obsessive about it. And that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I would say that that's my general routine.
I'm not sure that those are so quirky.
Yeah, right.
I think they're more normal for some of the smaller company CEOs,
Yep.
to be truthful. Next question would be about social media. How do you use LinkedIn and social to benefit your business?
Yeah, so we did I will say like we did LinkedIn and just to marketing and like paid advertising in general. I've always believed in the omni channel. You have to kind of be doing all or nothing, but specifically LinkedIn, we saw like very low the conversions were not great for paid. So we do for as far as LinkedIn goes, we do a lot of like organic as a team. And what I mean by that is like cohesive omni-channel messaging. So like if I think like February, our marketing campaign was related to our fax product. So we spent the whole month, all of our team, just whether it was posts, whether they were doing like podcasts or whatever the case was just a cohesive approach that all of our customers and partners could see. That was our marketing for that month because we don't want it to be like confusing and all over the place. But I would say, yeah, from a LinkedIn perspective, just to answer your question, the organic's the way to go. If you can create good organic content, that's the way to drive leads from LinkedIn for sure.
Well, LinkedIn is very expensive if you do paid ads.
It
I can tell
is.
you that.
Yeah.
It's effective in enterprise companies
Yeah.
because you can get at the senior people that are decision makers. But I think it's organic is probably better suited for this market as well.
I agree.
So okay, thanks. Um, so what advice would you give to other CEOs who are watching or listening, who may be struggling with personnel issues, acquiring new customers, or any other day-to-day challenge you can think of?
Yeah. So I guess I would say be persistent, right? I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs are like almost stubbornly persistent and keep going even when we probably should have stopped already. But one of the advice that I give to a lot of these startup entrepreneurs that I help with, especially like here in Tampa, is right that old saying of what's it like never let them see you sweat, right? I guess is that how the saying goes. So, because nobody wants to do business with somebody who's desperate and is like, oh, like begging, right? So, and definitely had that part of our evolution when it was back at Sintel, where we were at deals where I knew like I could not walk out of that meeting without a signed agreement, or there was going to be potentially pretty big consequences for me personally. And to be able to just during that, when like I need this deal, but you got to kind of keep it cool and collected and act nonchalant, like everything's all good, because right, again, nobody wants to do business with a desperate person. So that's one of the biggest pieces of advice. And just on top of that, like I think one of the things that I struggled with especially, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs in the similar phase do the same thing, was just starting out, you're wearing a ton of hats. You're doing the sales, you're doing the marketing, you're doing the support, you're doing the installations, or whatever however your business model is. And I had a struggle early on where I would sell a ton of deals, and then I would make myself busy because I was also the one going out and doing the installations. So what I would do is when I would I'd fill up my calendar for 3 weeks, and I would purposely take my foot off the gas as far as sales goes. And then once I was done doing all those installations, now my pipeline's dried up, and now I'm, spending the next 4 to 6 weeks trying to just get new business and really kind of doing nothing. So it's just that, like, never take your foot off the gas and just keep that scrappy mentality and keep building that pipeline, because the feast or famine, approach is definitely not not a sustainable, scalable business model for sure.
And a lot of people from the technical background, they really struggle with what you just talked about, especially the sales and marketing side. Because in my experience, they all think that they can be VPs of marketing. Because
Yeah,
I've been that, and so a lot of it, technical VPs of engineering or CTOs think they know what a VP of marketing does. It's not just naming products.
of course.
There's a whole lot more to it than that. But it's a struggle for a lot of the younger startup guys, like your incubator people that you were talking about.
Mhm.
So interesting. So based on that advice, what advice would the Daniel of 2022 give to the Daniel of 2010?
Yeah, I would say enjoy the process, enjoy the freedom, and just hold on, right? Definitely hold on.
Put your seatbelt on.
Yeah.
So so what is one factoid that no one really knows about you, because you do talk publicly, but and you interview, but what's one factoid nobody really knows about you that you are willing to share with us?
Yeah, I think I have the greatest pets names on the planet, and I have one of them tattooed on me. So I have my cat. I don't know if anybody can see. I have my cat named Heisenberg. It's upside down on my arm. His name's I don't know if you ever saw Breaking Bad, but I thought that was one of the greatest shows ever. So we named our cat Heisenberg. And I also have a golden retriever whose name's Spaghetti. So she's great
Okay.
too.
All right. So we're down the home stretch now. So let's jump into what I like to call the lightning round. There are four really quick questions. Just answer with the first thing that kind of comes to your mind. Since the pandemic started in March 2020, as we talked about, what was the one thing in your life that has changed permanently?
I would say my schedule and my routine. Now that I don't have to waste, so much of the day commuting, and I can actually focus on being productive in that time, getting things done. Right, like as soon as I'm up and at 'em, I'm at my desk in seconds. Didn't have that luxury before, so I would say that's the biggest change that in my personal life, and I think it's been for the better for sure.
Okay. I'm sure a lot of people have a similar answer, at
Yeah,
least the ones who can stay working remotely.
yeah, yeah, of course.
Um, so we talked about LinkedIn a little bit. What's the one thing that you learned on LinkedIn this year from someone else to help your business?
So I know you had Bill McLean on here, so I'll give him a shout out. He's like LinkedIn Jesus, that guy. So yeah, he's got it down. So no, one of the things that I've learned is just kind of like the algorithms that LinkedIn uses. So again, we moved away from a paid LinkedIn strategy to more of like an organic. So it's very important, like what content you like, what content you post, what hashtags you use. Right, it's going to post that content to your relative audience. So I think that in particular, and being able to be more strategic about the content that's pushed out there has been our biggest change this year.
And Bill has spent a lot of money, I'm sorry, a lot of time on perfecting his commenting and getting,
Yep.
and he also does some educational marketing, if you
Yep.
will, answering about some of the technologies that people hear about, but they don't really know it. But he's very personable on LinkedIn, which
Mhm.
helps him. But he also hired a LinkedIn coach,
Oh, he
which
did?
I think that's what got him
Yeah.
started.
Yeah,
Pretty
amazing.
that was interesting. So the third and next to last lightning round question is, what's the one piece of advice that you would give a new hire Gen Z, so somebody 25 or under, that you would hire to your company? What's that advice to make that person successful?
Yeah, I would say find something to do that you're passionate about. And we worked obviously we have like interns here at Virtue too, and we've had people that bounce around different disciplines and skill sets. And and I just look back on, what made me successful. And it's finding that something that you're passionate about, because it's really easy to obsess over something that you're passionate about. And it's difficult to do something that you don't like. So, and back to that, age old advice of, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. It's true. As corny as it sounds, it's super true. So, make sure what you're doing is what you like to do, and you can be passionate about it.
Right. And they're all digital natives. In fact, most of them have never seen a rotary phone. They wouldn't know what it is. They certainly wouldn't have any respect for the Nortel of Fujitsu days.
Yeah, definitely not.
I know that for a fact. Um, okay, and then the last lightning round question is: what's the last book that you read, and how has it helped you?
So I'm not done with it yet, but I'm about a quarter of the way through "The Obstacle Is the Way" by Ryan Holiday, which is basically it goes through. I don't know if you've read that book before, but basically like, ancient like Greek ways and philosophies on problem solving, and basically approaching a problem as an opportunity instead of a problem. And that's just something that's been always true to our core. Anytime we see a problem, we see dollar signs, because we know, if we can solve this problem, whether it's with automation or whatever the case is, right? Solving problems is what essentially what generates revenue. So so far it's been a good book. I'll keep you posted, let you know at IT Expo.
Okay. Do you ever gift books to your staff?
So we have for our sales team. So our sales team does like they'll do like Dale Carnegie and stuff like that. So we will in
Mm,
that, but we haven't done that at scale. It's probably something we should do.
okay, just curious.
Yeah.
So, so that kind of rounds out the questions and everything for Daniel, who's shared a lot of information with us today. I'd like to thank Daniel and this and the Cloud Voice Alliance, who sponsors all these CEO success webinars. And I hope that these tips help you. A little announcement is that in June at IT Expo or the Tech Super Show, whatever you want to call, whatever TMC is calling it these days, I moderate a panel called the CEO Insights. It is on Wednesday, June 22nd at 1 p.m. Daniel will be on that panel along with three other CEOs, and so it'll be another place for Daniel to answer questions. They're similar but slightly different because there's four unique people from different backgrounds, which is very interesting, and it's a very diverse panel this year. And everybody's journey is unique. And those of you who watch this, your journey is unique. And there's no textbook for any of this. Just like there was no book for the pandemic, there's no textbook for these. There are different suggestions. There's a lot of books, but you got to find one that works and has the information for you, and that's going to work in your environment. And we talked about leadership styles, uh, philosophies, and culture. And to me, those are very important. And of course, for me, and my book describes this, but I call it PPLC, Path to CEO, philosophies you bring to the party, leadership styles that drive your company and your leadership team, and the culture that's created out of all of that. You say it doesn't, it's the whole team that shares it, but it comes from the top.
Always.
And it's your open philosophies and your collaborative style that kind of drive everybody else to create that culture. And people want to work at those companies.
Of
That's
course.
why I asked the question to you about Gen Z. You're going to have, with being a young, scrappy company, you're going to have Gen Zs that want to work for you.
Of course.
There's no
Yeah.
question about it.
We already got them.
So you already got them.
Yeah.
So as we close out, I haven't announced yet who's going to be the next uh, CEO Success Story webinar, but it'll be in just about 2 months. They're about 2 months apart. The replay for this will be available within the next day or two. I don't control that, somebody else does, but we'll be able to get that up. And I want to thank everybody who attended, everybody who watches the replay, and Daniel for your time and preparation and for doing the webinar. And we can give everybody back 18 minutes of their day.
No, thank you,
Thank you
Bill.
very much.
This was
Yeah.
great. Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right. Take care.
You guys.